Good morning, everyone, and welcome. We are going to get started here. We appreciate all of you coming. My name is Tracy Boyd, and I am Assistant Division Counsel and Co-Development Officer for the State Fire Marshal, and we are here, of course, today to talk about the 2024, what will be the 2024, possibly 2025, Ohio Fire Code. And we're going to go through the process that will ensue from here on out, and we will talk about some major formatting changes that we had to make to the fire code, and then we will go over some of the significant changes that we have made from the 2017 to the 24. But before we get into all of that, State Fire Marshal Kevin Reardon is here. He's going to welcome everyone and say hello. We also have our Chief Deputy Sluter and our Division Legal Counsel Tim Thompson, so that's who's up here at the panel. We will have question and answers at the end, so if you have any questions, we have a lot of our code people here as well who can help hopefully navigate all these things that are going to happen here. But Marshal?
Thank you, and welcome to the Division of State Fire Marshal. We're glad you're here today. And we're really glad to finally be talking about the fire code revision.
Very glad. I'm sorry, Marshal.
Themselves. This has been long in the making. We have spent I don't know how many hours going through different code provisions, different meetings to talk about code provisions. Do we want to do this? Do we want to do that? Do we want to follow this model code? Do we want to follow that model code? We've been all over. And so this is the culmination of all the meetings, all those discussions, all the reading, and we are glad that we are here. This process, as Tracy will explain, is a little bit different than what we've had in the past. One of our challenges to this process is that little 2-for-1 rule provision that the legislature enacted a couple years ago. Basically, in a nutshell, the way 2-for-1 works is if you have any state department, agency, organization, of state government, you have rules that are in the revised code or administrative code. For every one new provision, you have to eliminate 2 existing ones. So, literally, by June 30th of 2025, if we stayed with the old process, we would have to eliminate 1/3 of the 1,610 pages in the fire code somehow. So, what you're going to hear this morning is the option to maintain the integrity and the intent of the Ohio Fire Code without eliminating much, if any, at all. So we're glad to get there, and we're glad you're here. One other thing I want to mention is last year we, at the Marshal's office, we started to take the command staff on the road. Take all the bureau chiefs. We go to each corner of the state, and we just do kind of a, hey, we're here, what do you want to talk about? Let us tell you a little bit about what we do, because I can tell you the majority of the fire service does not really know what the fire marshal's office does, and that's our fault. We have to learn that. So by going out throughout the state and talking a little bit about what the marshal's office does, we were able to take and bridge some of those gaps last year. So I'm going to leave up here, actually over there, and I'll leave up here. Our schedule for the 2024 Command Staff Tour. Our first meeting is up in Bowling Green on April 25th, if you're from that part of the state. Bowling Green at the Veterans Building from 10 till noon. And the other meetings you'll see, but we cover every corner of the state. They're a good opportunity for us to have some interaction, talk about whatever you want to talk about, and we can share a little bit about what we do. So, participate in the process, especially the petition process. This is your period to say, hey, we agree with you, hey, we don't. Alternative, please participate. Okay,
so, well, we're already well into the slides. I must have been hitting buttons and I didn't know. I apologize for that. So to get started, a couple of things just logistically. We do have a sign-in sheet over here at the front table. If you would please sign in. We're also going to have a QR code that we'll put up here, so if that's easier for you, if you want to scan it and fill it in that way. But please sign in before you take off. And there's also a sign-in sheet if you want to be on our stakeholder list, and that is a email blast that I send people. I maintain that list, and whenever we do anything with the fire code, I will send out a notification to anyone who's asked to be on that list. It will tell you when we start the petition period. You would have gotten one if you're on it, so if you didn't, you know you're not on that list yet. You will know when we start the comment period and every other step as we go through the process. So, I'm doing it again. Okay, so our current fire code, as you all know, is the 2017 Ohio Fire Code. We are going to try to get done this year. We may not be able to get done this year. So we may end up with the 25 Ohio Fire Code, but at this point, I'm still optimistic and I'm still calling it the 24 Ohio Fire Code. When we do that, we were previously at the 2015 International Fire Code. We will be coming into line with the 2021 Ohio Fire Code. That will incorporate changes for both the 2018 and the 2015 IFC. So that is where we start as a baseline for how we get our fire code. We start with those national model changes. We also bring forward any of the prior Ohioizations that we have done, so things that we have had in the fire code in the past that were Ohioized, we bring those forward as well, unless, of course, there's some reason that the national changes have caught up to what we did, or there's been technology changes where those aren't relevant anymore or something like that. But if we previously had language in the fire code, we bring that forward as well. Changes also come from the State Fire Marshal and the State Fire Marshal's office. If we have policy matters that we want to include language on, or if there's something that's not working or something that needs to be clarified, we internally make changes, and then the rest and the bulk of the changes to the fire code come from all of you. So that is the petition and comment period that we're going to talk about. We consider it your fire code. I tell people all the time, I teach this all the time, or a variation of this all the time, and tell people if there's a problem, if you're a code enforcement officer, if you are on the street and something isn't working in this code, let us know. We want to try to address it. We want to make it the best code we possibly can. So those stakeholder comments and everything, they're very important to us. So we ask you to please engage in the process as we go through it. These are the 5 steps that we will have to go through in order to actually get the fire code effective. So the first one, which we're here today to kick off, is our petition period. The petition period the length of it varies. For this particular code, and this is different than what we have done in the past, 1 month. This petition period will remain open for 1 month. That's a little bit shorter than it has been in the past, so please pay attention to that if you do want to get language to us. Keep the date in mind. During this period, anyone can petition us for anything, any change to the fire code, any language that's in there, any language that isn't in there that you think should be in there. This is your chance to come to us and say, here's a change that I'm proposing. Monday, May 13th, that is the deadline for all petitions to be in. So again, that is 1 month from today. Any petition that we receive after that date may or may not be considered during this cycle. We will not just discard those proposed changes. We will catalog them and keep them until our next update. But again, that's going to be roughly 5 years from now, so it may not be relevant at that point. Anything that comes in after that hard deadline, we try to get to, but again, we're on a tight timeline for this particular update, so we may or may not have time to get to those. So please, if you do want to get something to us, keep that date in mind. Petitions can pertain to any topic within the fire code. They're not limited in any way. You can file as many petitions as you choose. But please limit your comments or your language to one topic on any one petition form. That just makes it easier for us to work with it and get through the language. And we're going to look at this form in a little bit. When you get to the form, it will have language on there, or drop-down boxes. It's a fillable PDF. You put your name, put your organization, if any. You do not have to file on behalf of an organization. It can be an individual or 2 people or 200 people. We do ask for contact information. If that is not on the form and if there's a problem with the form, or if there's something we don't understand about your petition, there's no way for us to get in touch with you. So please put contact information and fill out those boxes. If you are filing on behalf of yourself, that is fine. If you're filing on behalf of an organization, we don't need every member of your organization to file the same petition. We know if we get it from an organization, your membership is behind you and they support that particular petition. All right, so we have gotten that in the past, and it's fine if you do it. We'll just combine them, but you do not have to go through all that legwork, and neither does your membership. When you file a petition, you're going to actually put down the section number and the verbatim language of the section that you want to amend or change in some way. So you're going to spell out the actual text. It does not help us, and we can't capture what you're really getting at if you just tell us, I don't like section 105.2 or whatever. So you're going to literally spell out what change do you think needs to be made in the next iteration of the fire code. These are standard formatting and editing marks. Anything that you want to add to the fire code, you're going to underline. Anything that you want to take out of the fire code, you're going to delete. So it can be, as in this example up here, a portion of a particular section. You want to add one word, take out 2 words, that's fine. If it's an entire section, you would just underline the whole thing. You can write brand new language. You don't have to just amend what's there already. If you want to take out an entire section, you would just strike through the whole thing. But again, you would put this language into the form and strike it through. We already talked about those. So after the petitions come in, what happens to them, right? So internally within the marshal's office, we have a work group. It is a kind of varying group of people, but it always includes the marshal and the chief deputy, myself, Mr. Thompson, Chief Smith from our Code Enforcement Bureau, and many of his assistant chiefs. We go through the language, we read it, we edit, or we debate it, we talk about it, sometimes ad nauseum. Sometimes we get a little tired of each other and talking about certain topics, but we do look at every single one of the petitions and we evaluate how it's going to impact everything else in the fire code. We will take one of 3 actions on it. Typically, we will either accept something, which means we're going to include your language in the next iteration of the fire code, or we're going to deny it and not include it in the next iteration of the fire code, or we may accept it in principle, meaning we like the idea, but we don't think that this particular language gets us there, so we may edit it. We may include part of the suggestion, but not all of it. After the petition period closes, we will be in this process from here on out. We already have received some petitions for this go-round, and we're going to start looking at those now. But after the petition period actually closes, we will hopefully take a month or so, maybe 2. It depends on how many petitions we actually have. When we have gotten through all of them, we will publish 2 documents, a revised draft of the fire code, and then we will publish what is called a report on petitions. That document will be a compendium report of every petition that anyone has filed. So you will have an opportunity to see what anyone else said we should change in the fire code. When we publish those 2 documents, and we don't have a hard date right now because we don't know how many petitions we're going to get and how long that process is going to take us, but we'll go through on our website where you can find out when all of these things happen, and the dates will be there for you to keep track of, I guess, and participate. So when we get those documents up on the website, that starts the comment period. That's our second phase. The comment period is a little more limited than the petition period. It is your opportunity to look at that report on petitions and see what anyone else asked us to do, what we did and didn't include, and to comment on it. Either we denied it and you think it should be in there, or we added it and you don't think it should be in there, or even we added it and you're very glad we put it in there. You can tell us that too. But the point of the comment period is for everyone to comment on something that somebody else has already asked us to do in the code. The comment period itself will be 3 weeks. So that will be the active period when you can actually get comments filed and sent to us. Again, anything received after those hard deadlines, we may or may not have time to get to. We try really hard to get to everything that anyone submitted to us. Outside of that, the comment period works a lot like the petition period did. You can file anything, as many as you want, but we ask that it be one topic or refer to one petition at a time. Don't try to address 6 petitions in one comment form. File 6 different forms with us. They have to be in writing, they have to be on the form. I will show you here in a few minutes where that is. Again, we either accept the comments, reject the comments, or make some kind of halfway in between. We may amend them, we may group them together if we get a lot of comments or petitions on the same topic. Again, the petition period will close 3 weeks after it starts. That's why it's important to pay attention to our website, because those dates will be up there when we actually start that comment period, and then obviously carrying forward those 3 weeks. When we get done processing all of the comments that we received, we will do the same thing that we did during the first phase of this. We will publish a now report on comments, and it will be a compendium report of everything that we received during the comment period, what action we took, and our justification for why we did or didn't include the language in the fire code. We will also post a revised version of the fire code. So we're starting out this time, it's a little bit different. We have a revised draft out now. Part of that is because of this big sea change we're going to talk about on how we actually do the fire code. So we have a Redline version now. So before we actually start the formal process of rule adoption in Ohio, we will have given you 3 different iterations of the fire code to review and to get involved and to make comments or petitions about. So the Common Sense Initiative this starts the formal process of rule adoption in Ohio. Common Sense Office is an office within the Lieutenant Governor's office, and their review of any rules that any administrative agency files is to make sure that any regulatory intent is justified with relation to the business impact that it's going to make on the people that the code affects. So we file a rule packet with the Common Sense Initiative office. They conduct their review. This process can take anywhere from a couple of weeks to a couple of months. It depends on the breadth and depth of the rules, and their process internally as well. They review everything. They review the rules, of course. We also file a business impact analysis with them. They review that. During this part of the process, there is also a stakeholder input portion. So if you have additional comments that you did not put forth at our phases, either the comment or the petition period, here's another opportunity to voice your opinion on things contained within the fire code. The Common Sense Initiative has a website. You can go and sign up for notifications on our rules whenever we start that process, or any other administrative agency that you may be interested in. And we also will send out notifications with regard to this process and that it's starting, and to tell you that time frame of how long you would have to make comments during this part of the process. CSI will review our rules and they will make a recommendation to us. That recommendation will be, we think you should change something, or we think you should proceed with the rules. After we get that, they don't actually tell us that we have to change the rules, but they give us their recommendation on how we should to better address a particular business need. We file back with them a letter of acknowledgement telling the CSI office that we have received their comments and what we're going to do, and again, our justification for what we're going to do with regard to anything that they may have suggested to us. After we complete that progress, the next phase of this is JCAR. JCAR is a joint committee of the legislature. It's composed of members of both the Ohio House and the Ohio Senate. And JCAR's job is to review any administrative rules that any agency is proposing to adopt. And basically their function is to make sure that we're staying in our lane. So they will do a legislative review, and they will either let us move forward with the rules. They could potentially tell us that they don't like our rules, which would be in the form of a suggestion that they should be invalidated. If JCAR does that, the rules go to the full legislature, and the legislature as a whole would review the rules and then tell us whether or not we could proceed with them. So barring that happening to us, JCAR's process starts when we file a rule packet with them. And we file everything that has happened up to this point, the business impact analysis that we did for CSI, their recommendation letter, our acknowledgement letter, and of course, any change or redline versions of our rules. All of that gets submitted to JCAR, and I'm sorry, they don't get redline versions. They get the clean copies, but all of that gets filed with JCAR, and that starts their jurisdiction. JCAR's jurisdiction lasts for 65 days. So that once we get to that point, we have much more ability to predict when exactly the code is going to become effective. And we can start letting all of you know that as well. So JCAR also has a process to get involved. Everything that gets filed with them goes into the Register of Ohio. So if you want to get involved at the JCAR process, you can sign up in the Register of Ohio to get notifications for when any administrative body proposes rules. You'll get a notification and you'll get an opportunity again. They have a hearing, we have a hearing during the JCAR process. For the first few days, several days, JCAR is conducting their internal review and things are kind of quiet. Between days 31 and 40 of JCAR's jurisdiction, the state fire marshal has to hold a hearing. We hold that hearing here in this room. It is yet again another opportunity for any stakeholder to come in and say what they do and or do not like about the proposed rules at that point. Barring any changes at CSI, this will be the same set of rules that we published to you and gave to you at the end of the comment period. Usually things don't get changed at the CSI phase, but they could. And obviously if we have to make a change at that point, that would be the version that we actually filed with JCAR. During that time, our hearing again is in this room and anyone has the opportunity to come in and yet again make comments to us. After we conduct that hearing, we file a hearing summary report, so we tell JCAR what anyone said at our hearing and whether they did or didn't like something within our rules. And then between days 41 and 65, at some point, JCAR itself has a hearing on the rules. So in addition to our hearing that we hold here, where you could come in and make a comment about the rules, you can go to JCAR's hearing and make comments about the rules as well. This all gets posted on JCAR's site, the date gets posted on our website, and we try to do stakeholder notifications as well as some social media things to let everyone know when these hearings are all happening. After JCAR's jurisdiction ends, which is that day 65, we can final file the rules. That can happen on day 66. So whenever we filed with JCAR, you count forward 66 days, that is the absolute first time that we can final file the rules. They cannot become effective until 10 days after that. So that date is something that we control from the marshal side. We set the actual effective date. We usually try to do it pretty quickly, right after we get to that 76th day. Occasionally there is a reason why we may not final file on the exact first day that we can, or there may be a reason that we would push a day or two for the effective date, but typically we don't do that. But when we do that final filing, that's when we set the actual effective date. That's when they become effective. And again, those postings and those deadlines will all be put on our website, so you'll know when the actual new fire code becomes the actual new fire code and you can start enforcing it. So our final phase for us at the Marshal's office is to do publication and training. That's the last piece of our process that we go through. That can change from code to code, and depending on whether we're doing a full update of the code versus an interim update with just one section of the code, like we did a few years ago with fireworks when we were only looking at that rule. Publication and training can include anything from technical bulletins, from printed materials that we put on our website, from discussions like this that we hold here at our office, or we have called in the past road shows where we traveled around the state and gave talks, and we try to do them in all four corners of the state and here centrally as well, and we go over major changes that we did implement in the fire code. We will come back to training, publication in a minute, because it ties into some things that have changed with regard to how we actually are going to be adopting the fire code this time around. But up to this point, do we have any questions on the process that we go through? You can ask them later too, you don't have to ask now. But so part of these changes, the marshal alluded to this earlier. A few years ago, the legislature implemented some new legislation for all agencies that do administrative rules, and they basically said, these words here are words that we don't really want to use in our administrative code. So any provision that contains one of these rules is a regulatory restriction, and they challenged us with if for any restriction that we were to add to the code, we had to take 2 other restrictions out. So in the past, when you have seen rules filed, we've told you go to the Law Writer website. That is the actual official version of the Ohio Fire Code. This is the format of what we filed on our rules. You would see Rule 32 and you would see the language in Rule 32 in context. Now, in part, in response to the regulatory restriction requirements that we have, we are not going to actually adopt the text of the IFC into the Ohio Fire Code. We are going to incorporate it by reference. So when you go to that Law Writer site, you will see things like, we're adopting the 21 version of the IFC, and this is what we're changing. So in section 3201, we're going to take out International Building Code and put in Building Code. So it makes it a little more tedious, particularly in our update cycle when we don't have everything cohesively printed for you in a nice bound volume at the end or a nice red 3-ring binder. So it makes it a little harder for you to read. That's part of the reason that it took us a little longer to get this code out, because we're giving you those Redline versions up front now so you can see all of those changes in context. Because we are now incorporating by reference, we had our own numbering system through the Legislative Service Commission that we always included in the fire code, and we amended all of the IFC languages to also have our numbering system. Because now we're not bringing all of that language verbatim into the fire code, we didn't want to have some things have our numbering system and the IFC numbering system, and other pieces to just have the IFC numbering system. So we are deleting, we've talked with LSC, and we're deleting some of these numbers and letters and things and all of this parenthetical stuff that we used to put in our rules. So you won't see that. We have been wanting to do that for a long time because we just think it makes it a lot easier to read for you as you're out there looking and trying to learn the code. So in some ways it'll be a lot better. The numbering system will be definitely. Things that have changed. Rule 1301, 7701 of the administrative code, right? You're used to seeing that. That's what appeared in the code. Now what that's going to look like, chapter 1. This right here and this right here say the exact same thing, just in different formats. So we're hoping that makes it a lot easier for everyone.
You'll love it.
Right? I love it because I used to have to keep track of all the numbering. So I'm going to back up here. Rules become chapters. That is one thing to note. Obviously, when you're talking about them, you can interchange that language a little bit. When you're formally talking about the rules, though, that reference we're changing again to match the national language rather than the LSC. So paragraph will become section. So again, these parenthetical statements here, C8B, that goes away. The of Rule 50 just becomes section. And again, paragraphs become sections, because again, that's how the IFC actually refers to things. With regard to referencing a standard, this ANSI standard, as listed in Rule 80, just becomes the ANSI standard. That does not in any way change the fact that you only enforce the version of the standard that is listed in Rule 80, or the fact that you only go to that standard for the portions that we send you to in the code. So that's not changing, we're just changing how we're actually spelling it out, how we're naming it within the code. So on our website now, we have Redline versions. They look a lot like this. Sometimes there's red, sometimes there's green, sometimes there's blue, sometimes there's purple. That is because we have gone through these many, many times, and if you've ever done any of that editing, it changes the color and format. But the basic thing to know about this, so you'll know where language is coming from, anything that you see that's just underlined, just like I just told you, if you're going to file a petition with this, that means it's new language. That's something that was added from the prior code. If something is struck through, it's something being taken out of the code, something that was there before and is being taken out. Yellow is Ohioized language. I did that not only for you, but for me. It made it a lot easier when I was creating the other documents that will actually file, those incorporation documents that will get filed with LSC. Made it a lot easier for me to find where all of those Ohioizations were. That text is still italicized like you're used to seeing it, but at least now it is going to also be in yellow highlights. Anything that Ohio took out of the International Fire Code language is what the blue highlighting is for. That means we either, if there's actually language that is blue and struck through, we took that out of the national code. If there's just a blue highlight, kind of two words just highlighted, that means something in between those words or right before those words was taken out of the national language, and that's usually going to be something that happened in a prior update of the code, not this one. But I still wanted to mark where we took things out of the national language. So these versions, these Redline versions, are on our website, and let's see if I can do this. I had someone who was going to run this part to get the sites up here for you. Oh, there he is. Thanks, Ken. So we have three places that all of these things are located on our website, and a couple different ways to get there. So this featured resource on our website will take you to the same page that Ken's going to go to here in just a second. And it is a resource page that we created specifically for this update cycle. It will have everything relevant to this update on it. It will change as we go throughout the process. Right here on the top, you can see it's announcing the meeting that we are in right now. As you go down the page, we get to the petition period. When we're done with the petition period, it will move to the bottom. We have a history section of the development of the code, so it will move to the bottom, but the relevant information for the comment period will move to the top. So if you want to check out something that we've done already, or you want to just catch up on where we are in the process, that history section will always be there. But the most important and most current information will always be at the top of our page. As we go through all of this formatting stuff that I just talked to you about, we created a section to explain that to you. And we have something new for everyone this time around. We did a significant changes document. We've been asked about that a couple times, so this time there will be one actually available. There will also be this draft of the 2024 Ohio Fire Code. That is those Redline versions that I just talked to you about. We have grouped them in sections so you don't have one huge document with all 51 rules in it. We've broken those down, I think, into 5. And so rules 1 through 11 are together, rules 12 through somewhere around 29 are together. And you can open those and go through and look at the Redline changes to see what it is we're actually changing this time around. The petition and comment, that's the other thing I wanted to go to. I want to go to that actual form. Okay. So the petition and comment form is on this page as well. And once you get there, there it is. So that will change when we get to the comments. That same button will be there. It will take you to the page that actually will explain the petition and comment form for you. And it has a launch button. Did you find it? There it is. So this will tell you a little bit about the petition and comment form. The big blue box at the top will tell you, or it's a launch button that will actually take you to the form. This form looks exactly the same whether you're in the, doing a petition or you're doing a comment, with one exception. So name and address, like I said earlier, it's important, give us all that information. This select one up here, petition versus comment, you're going to tell us whether you're filing a petition, which you would be doing in the next month, or thereafter if you're filing a comment. If you actually hit that comment button, another box comes up over here and it says petition number. That is because any comment that you filed should reference a petition, right? So those numbers you're going to find in that report on petitions that we put up on the website when we're through with the petition period itself. So that's the only difference in the form. You'll put that there so we'll know which petition you're commenting about. Otherwise, this form looks exactly the same. It has a place to put in the actual language you want to change, and you can use bolding, you can use underlining and striking through. We made sure those were there, of course. There is a place to put why. Give us a justification. Why is this important, and what problem are you trying to solve with this particular change? Then at the bottom, there is a place to put a justification and a cost kind of impact that this may have. So give us an idea of what this proposed change or how it may impact financially businesses that the proposal affects. At the bottom of the page, there's instructions on how to file the document, how to save the document, and how to actually get it submitted. Once you hit that submit button, it comes directly to me, but you will also get an email confirming that it has been submitted. So, any questions on that process? Anything else you might want to see or have questions about the form or how to submit that? Okay. All right. So when we get done with this whole process, we've made a lot of changes, right? And there's a vast difference in how you're going to find information. So publication is going to be important. In the past, the ICC has published our fire code. They are still going to publish our fire code. We will still get a printed book from them. We have told you in the past to find the actual and formal version of the fire code to go to the LawWriter site. LawWriter will only have those incorporation documents now. So this is a big change, and we're trying to get everyone aware of it now. You're going to actually be going to the ICC site to see the fire code in context. We have negotiated with the ICC so that you do not have to have any different subscription to them in order to be able to view the OFC, or to copy and paste, or to search. That will only be true for the Ohio pages. So, of course, it doesn't change for the ICC's codes itself, so you would still have to have their I forget what they call it, Supreme package or whatever, in order to have those capabilities to search and cut and paste. But on the Ohio sites, you will be able to see our Ohio Fire Code language in context, and you'll be able to search it, and you'll be able to cut and paste it into other documents like your citations and things. One other thing that they will do is, as you know now, they do for their language, when they make changes, those changes are in blue text. Our Ohioized language will be in red text on their website. So that's going to be another easy way for you to find where we have made an Ohioization. All right, so a little bit of a change. The building side has gone ahead of us, and they are already using this system and negotiated a lot of this for us, which I'm very thankful about. And it works pretty well, and it's very nice, but it is going to be a little bit harder logistically to get used to, at least at first in the beginning, and knowing where to go to find the stuff. Books will be published by the ICC. They will likely be a softbound cover as opposed to the 3-ring binder, which might be a lot nicer if you're carrying them around, because it'll make them a little bit smaller. Even though we are incorporating language by reference as opposed to actually adopting it into the OAC, it will be enforceable in the same way. The big thing about that to remember, though, is you're not just enforcing the 21 fire code, you're enforcing it as amended by Ohio. So even if you're reading the IFC, you have to know where all of those changes were. But enforceability-wise, it is still enforceable in the exact same manner that it is now. Okay. So actual changes, all right? So what are we actually changing? Like I said a few minutes ago, we do have a significant changes document on our website. This list that I'm going to go through is not exhaustive, and I'm not going to hit everything that's on the slides. I'm just going to touch on a few things that are kind of bigger changes as we go through. So one thing right off the bat, up in Rule 1, we added language to say we're actually incorporating the 2021 Ohio Fire Code. International Fire Code into our Ohio Fire Code. We had to add language for that, of course, and we've spelled out a couple things with regard to how the Ohio Fire Code applies, especially in relation to other codes, some application of unpermitted and unapproved matters and how the Fire Code applies to those. Agricultural properties, those are always a hot topic here in Ohio, and there has been some additional language added to those provisions to try to clarify when the fire code applies. Fire reporting has changed a little bit, and some service of citations and things, particularly with regard to the fire marshal and what we're required to do for serving our citations. That language has been changed significantly as well. Revolving loan language and the fire department grants, the language hasn't changed a lot, but we didn't really reorganize it, but we've tried to clarify some things, add some scoping, and put in some headers, so it's a little bit easier to find that language if you're going to be making your applications for those. We did a lot of cleanup language. The international codes did a lot of changes with terminology this time around. So there is a lot of language, a lot of new definitions. Everything that I've got here on this slide has changed. Mobile food trucks, again, another hot topic here in Ohio. When we adopted the last fire code, the international codes did not have language with regard to food trucks. We jumped forward and brought language into the Ohio Fire Code. Now, the national code has caught up to that. Actually, they did that in the 2018 cycle. They now have what they call, instead of food trucks, mobile food preparation vehicles. So that's the new terminology for those. We have amended their definition somewhat, and we have added some different language within their language. We did adopt the language that they have, but we made some Ohioizations in it, and we'll get to that in a minute. There are also a lot of new definitions with regard to temporary stage canopies, umbrella structures, some things related to tents have all been basically reorganized, and new terminology is used for those. So you'll want to make sure to apprise yourself of what those changes are. There's also a lot of definitions that have been heavily amended with batteries and all of the subcategories of batteries. And again, the temporary stage canopy has been deleted because they have those new terms that we just went over. Change of occupancy and occupancy classifications, we changed those heavily. We matched those to what the building side did though. So there were a lot of changes. There's always a lot of changes to those for some reason. But again, we always try to align those with the building side so we're consistent here in Ohio. With regard to Chapter 3, one of the biggest things that I want to point out to you is lithium-ion batteries. We do now have provisions, or we will, in the fire code to address lithium-ion batteries and micromobility devices. Food trucks, this is the definition that the international code adopted, but this yellow language is what we added in Ohio. So essentially, the international code defined a mobile food preparation vehicle as something that produces grease-laden vapors. As you know, in the past, our definition was much broader than that. We have narrowed our prior definition, but it is still broader and captures more than what the national code did. So ours is not only grease-laden vapors, but those things that prepare and cook food and move around. We also, these are some of the provisions that we pulled forward from what we previously had in the fire code that just weren't addressed on the national level, but we thought were important to keep, such as CO detection and 2 means of egress, some shut-off controls and wiring language we pulled forward. Another, I don't know, this is a big change, but it's definitely something to be aware of when you're looking at your schools. So tornado drills, all of the language in the fire code with regard to the tornado drills and the tornado shelters is Ohioized language. And in the past, we have required a tornado drill, once a month, every month during tornado season. Tornado season was previously defined as April to July. As you are all well aware, and we all are this season, we're getting tornadoes, we're getting more of them, and we're getting them earlier. So we changed that date. Tornado season is now March to July. That's going to require another tornado drill from your schools. We did put an exception into this language that if they participate in the EMA statewide drill that is conducted every March, usually around the 2nd or 3rd week of March, they don't have to do yet another one for the fire code purposes. But if they don't participate in that drill, they will now have to do one in March as well. Chapter 6 has been significantly changed because there's now a new Rule 12 in the fire code. Rule 12 deals with everything energy system related. So some of the language that was in Chapter 6 before is now going to be found in Chapter 12. The balance of things that were in Chapter 6 have been rearranged and reorganized and sometimes made more succinct, so that's kind of nice. But several changes there and just getting used to where that new language is located. Fire and smoke protection features, there is new language now with regard to the repair or replacement of penetrations for joints and voids in fire-resistant rated construction. And we were pretty happy to see that here at the Marshal's office because a lot of times things get penetrated and holes are made and cut and not repaired. So it compromises, obviously, the fire safety of the building. So there is now new language requiring repair. This is a big change right here, a significant change. Open parking garages are now required to be equipped with automatic sprinkler systems when the area exceeds 48,000 square feet. So that is obviously an important thing to the fire side. We do have that provision in our code. It is not contained in the building code. The marshal wanted to keep this provision in, and we'll see how this plays out as we go through the process. But as of right now, this is in the fire code, even though it is not in the building code. So it's just something to be aware of.
This will be very controversial, and this is where your voices are going to have to be loud and clear. Say why when this becomes an issue of debate, because it will be debated. For me, it's a no-brainer. With electric vehicles, the hazard is clear, very clear. And this is not that much of a stretch financially for this construction project. It's not.
So moving to Chapter 9, or well, I guess continuing in Chapter 9, some other changes. School extinguisher replacement changes have been made to the language there. Standpipe systems and where they're required, and particularly in the 4 or more story buildings in the certain occupancy groups. Redundant water supplies in certain buildings are required now. Calculating the occupant load. They have made changes with how you're going to calculate occupant load. I believe that as that plays out, it will actually allow for more people in a building than what you might currently be expecting. There are some provisions with regard to doors and egress systems to meet the clinical needs of care recipients, as well as some allowances for turnstiles in the means of egress. So make sure you check out those provisions. Again, those are changes that are going to be important to you as you're looking at the configurations of your buildings. Luminous egress path markings are no longer required in certain occupancies. Basically I-1, but not I-2, 3, and 4. Construction, there are a few changes. There's not a lot of changes in the construction requirements, but one thing that we did add as an Ohioization was some identification language for those buildings or properties where solar photovoltaic power systems are located. So we didn't change a lot of the provisions that apply to them, but we did put in additional language that you have to at least mark it somehow so we know that that's on the property. Chapter 12, I alluded to this a minute ago with the energy storage systems. This is a huge thing to make note of. We did not incorporate the 2021 IFC with regard to Chapter 12. This is the only one that you would be looking at as your baseline, the 2024 International Fire Code. And that is because this technology, as you all know, is moving very quickly, and we didn't want to be potentially 8 years behind. So for this rule only, Chapter 12 only, you will look at the 2024 as your baseline and then go from there. New ANSI standards with regard, NFPA standards with regard to combustible dust producing operations. There are a few changes in Chapter 23 for the motor fuel dispensing facilities. One of those is some clarification with regard to Buster and its application, the underground tank systems. I know in the past it's been an issue with regard to the lumber and storage of solid biomass, woodworking facilities and that sort of thing. There have been changes there with regard to sizes of piles and separation distances and things. I know that those have been missing in the past, so there's new language there to check out. Tents and membrane structures, as we said before, there's a lot of terminology changes, and that's reflected in Rule 31, so there's a lot of changes there. They've added a lot of language, they've moved language around, and they've expounded on a lot of things. High pile combustible storage, one thing I want to point out here is just there is language now with regard to lithium-ion batteries and the storage for those. So again, the codes are starting to catch up with some of that technology, and there's more resources for you in there. Fire safety during construction now requires daily site inspections. It also requires fire watches, and there are new qualifications for fire watch personnel. So that's going to be important to check out as well. We have 2 new rules in the fire code this time around: higher education laboratories and distilled spirits. So both of those are new to us in this iteration. There is a lot of new language with regard to plant processing and extraction facilities. We had some of that language in our prior fire code. Again, the national codes have now caught up. Explosives and fireworks. There were, in some ways, some not significant changes, a lot of changes, but not necessarily significant changes to this language, but we did want to make you aware of Rule 56. Obviously, we just did a big update of that rule when we did the consumer fireworks package, but we had tried to clarify some things that were going on that we didn't have time last time to kind of clarify, so we've done some of that clarifying language now and tried to make things clearer with regard to intent. There's not a ton of actual changes to language. There are a few. Those are listed up here on the slide, but also in that significant changes document. One thing to note, though, the cold spark devices, if you guys are seeing those, the sparktacular machines where you get the sparks coming up usually on the side of a stage at a wedding. Previously in Ohio, we treated those as a flame effect. The national language, again, has caught up to this. These are now called pyrotechnic effect simulation equipment, and in Ohio, they will require a Type 1 exhibitor license to use. So that's going to be a big change for that industry as well. On-demand mobile fueling, if you're seeing that in your jurisdiction, there are now provisions in the fire code, or will be. I keep saying like we're done, we're just starting off. I'm trying to rush the process. So we have proposed provisions to address on-demand mobile fueling. So if you're seeing that in your jurisdiction, there's now some tools with regard to that. I'm not going to read through these. This is Rule 80 standards. There are several that we have jumped forward to a newer standard than what was used in the international fire code. So we have moved beyond them on quite a few of the standards. I think all of these match the building code. There may be 1 or 2 that didn't implicate the building code that we did jump to a newer standard, but by and large, most of these we did to keep in line with what our what was done over on the building side. There are a couple also of new UL standards that we are referencing because, again, we added language we jumped to that newer standard on Rule 12, and we also added the lithium-ion language in Rule 3. So there are some UL standards that will be referenced in this version of the fire code that were not referenced in the national code, the 2021 national code anyway. So lots of things to check out there with regard to standards, and that just, again, when you are using the standards, make sure you're using the one that is referenced in the back in Rule 80. So any questions on any of that? It's a lot of information, a lot of changes.
Can you go back 2 slides just so we can see? Yes.
Sure. Easiest question of the day. Okay, so that's all we have for you today. Like I said, all of this information, the actual full list of the significant changes isn't every change we made to the fire code, but all of that will be on our website for at least the next week or so. The first thing you see when you get to the fire marshal's website will be a big button that says fire code update, so you can get to the page. And if you can't find anything, there's email boxes for both code enforcement as well as an email that is Ohio Fire Code, and that comes directly to me. So if you do have questions, that's how you can find us, and we'll get back to you obviously as quickly as we possibly can. I do have 2 things up here on the front table, a sign-in sheet. If you would sign in so we know who was here. We're also putting a QR code up, so if it's easier for you to sign in that way, we would appreciate that. There is also a sign-up sheet for the stakeholder list. So if you want to receive those emails from me telling you when we hit each one of these benchmarks, please sign up on that sheet and you will be added to that list and get those notifications directly from me. So, Marshall, closing?
Maybe I should know this, but why don't you jump from chapter 12 to 20?
I'm sorry, chapter?
Jump from chapter 12 to 20.
To go from chapter 12 to 20.
Because in the rules, we don't have, they're reserved for future use. Yeah, so that was, there's,
The future is not that.
right, so yeah, it's 1 through 12,
And then we'll go to
and then it's, now I forget, I used to know them. There's no 52 either, but yeah, it's because those are reserved for future use.
What do you think? It's a lot. Believe me, I mean, it's a lot from this perspective. Doing this for, I don't know, a year and a half, and Tracy's been working on it longer than that. It sounds confusing. I don't think it's okay. It's a change. And you know the whole thing about change. We hate that damn thing, but here we are. I think it'll be a change for the better. But we're gonna have to get through it when we get through it. Some of the provisions you saw are probably going to be controversial. I'm not one for watering down the fire code. I don't believe the fire code has a price tag to it. I want all Ohioans to have the best protection from the fire code as possible. Period. Everybody's protected equally. Some policymakers will like to have a fire code for their district and a different code for this district, and that's not what we're about. We're about all Ohioans.